What's up, StarCraft fans? Today we're doing another tier list application. This time we have Jonny3820. He will play first the solo as Tychus on Void Thrashing. So let's get started right away. Jonny is the call with us today. How are you today, Jonny?
Yeah, really good, thank you, CTG. Yeah, it's been sort of middle of the afternoon here, and it is quite warm outside, so I'm sitting here sweating slightly more than I normally would, partly due to a bit of nerves at being on,
Hold on.
but also...
Quick question. I know this is off topic,
Yes.
but what temperature would you characterize as warm?
So I'm in the UK, so it's about 25 degrees outside at the minute, and quite humid. Which is, yeah, it's I appreciate pretty calm by a lot of standards, but for me it is enough. let's put it that way. It is more than enough.
I figured.
So yeah, right. I'm just configuring these mutators. So basically, I'm doing the Void Thrashing with the War is Hell mutators. So it's one of the original sort of 10 to come out.
The sixth
So we've
one.
got Scorched.
That is
Say
mutator
that
number
again,
6.
sorry.
That is mutator number 6.
Indeed, it is. Yes. So I wanted to sort of, I didn't want to just solo a map, but at the same time I wanted to try and do something which was sort of doable and that I was pretty confident of. I've sort of relatively recently started actually soloing or trying to solo mutators, so it's, you know, hopefully going to work if I don't muck up my build order or anything like that. So I'm just to introduce the map and the mutators very briefly. We've got Void Thrashing, obviously reasonably straightforward map, quite a quick map under normal circumstances. So this normally takes sort of 15 minutes, I think, if you're playing it sort of reasonably normally. I've seen some really impressive speedruns on this map of like Phoenix players who can do it in like less than 10 minutes, like incredibly impressive stuff. But I shan't be doing anything like that. The mutators we've got evasive maneuvers, Scorched Earth, and Lava Burst. The big advantage from my point of view when sort of considering doing this was that basically none of the mutators really make the enemy comp any stronger, which is a bit of an advantage from my point of view. Particularly with sort of Tychus P2, I think his power level kind of drops off a little bit when you end up playing against mutators, which you know, either sort of resurrect the enemy, like just die, anything like that. So yeah, I've sort of tried to shore myself up slightly on this one. Mutators wise, we've got evasive maneuvers. It's a nuisance, the enemy teleport, particularly when combined with sort of Lava Burst and Scorched Earth. Sometimes you do have to be a little bit careful that sort of Tychus in particular, who I'll be using by and large to do most of the heavy lifting on this level. You have to be a little bit careful that he's not chasing teleporting enemies into like Lava Bursts and stuff like that. But in general terms, you know, Scorched Earth and Lava Burst both do quite a lot of damage. This level's one where you can lose the Odin in particular pretty... There we go. Great stuff. So, yeah, so sort of, you know, Lava Burst and Scorched Earth both do very similar things in that they create an environmental mutator which can do quite a lot of damage. As I say, when you drop Big Red Button, you know, the Odin disappears pretty quickly after that. But by that stage, it's kind of done its job, really. What I'm doing at the minute is I find personally, because I'm relatively new to playing mutators, I find that if I take my companion's expansion, then if I forget about an attack wave, basically, it means that excuse me, it means that I don't necessarily completely torpedo the entire mission by losing my opponent's base. I found that from my point of view, that's kind of quite a big reason why I get defeated is letting an attack wave through as opposed to actually sort of flat out failing the mutation. So I am in the process at the minute of taking my colleague's expansion. I'm taking CTG's expansion basically, and I'm just going to do that whilst trying to not incur too much damage on Tychus. I'm a pretty low APM player, not for any reason other than I'm just not very good. So I'm, you know, trying to sort of micro and macro the first sort of few minutes with Tychus, even with a commander like Tychus, who I appreciate is pretty, you know, P2 is a pretty blunt object commander. But I find that like the first few minutes, while you're still getting everything sorted in your own base, etc., you know, takes a bit of time, takes a bit more concentration, and then towards like a bit further down the line, you are a bit more able to concentrate on just microing like Tychus primarily. What I've done here is I've actually picked the Shredder Grenade upgrade over the over getting my third Outlaw out, so I'm going to pick Nux for my next Outlaw, but I wanted to get the Shredder Grenade out first because I find that with evasive maneuvers mutator on, it actually makes life a lot easier if you're able to one-shot stuff. So I'm doing that first, and we'll get Nux out pretty quickly. I'm not under a massive time pressure here. The Thrashers are not going to pop too soon, I don't think. And basically, I'm going to wait for the Odin to be off cooldown, because at that point I can go in, let Tychus get down to whatever health he ends up on, and then pop the big red button. I've actually, because I've been talking and I'm a bit nervous of doing this live, I've forgotten all my upgrades, which is rubbish, but also not necessarily the end of the world. So I'm just going to change my strategy slightly. Basically, I've got about another 2 minutes until the Odin is off cooldown, so we can chill out a little bit. We've got Terran Air, which is not... It's a relatively dangerous comp, but at the same time, just going to make sure they're not going to head down. No, they're going up the middle passage, which is fine. It's another reason, from my point of view, why I tend to take the my companion's expo, is because then you can be reasonably confident that the enemy wave is not going to come down what is sort of the top left side, i.e. into my natural. So if I'm doing that, that's great. That is big red button pop, so that's good news. That's the wave dealt with, and I'm just making sure that I'm at full sort of macro capacity everywhere, nearly. And then we're just waiting for... So we're going to send Tychus in and start poking. I'm just going to wait until Nux pops. I'm not massively concerned about the amount of damage that 2 Thrashers are doing at this stage. I'd rather get myself to a stage where we are not in a huge rush for the next one. I'm going to get Sam out next because he's going to help out in a pretty big way with the final set of Thrashers, final base. But we are also helpfully here going to roll this next attack wave into this push here. So we're just going to kite some of these Liberators back a little bit, so we're not getting hugely malleted by them, but that is all going pretty well. That's the wave largely dealt with. Pop Tychus there, set that off, and then we'll pop that out with Sam just to clear off the last Liberator. So that has all gone relatively well. I'm just going to keep an armor upgrades as well, because it's really easy to not hear the upgrades with all of this stuff going on. So we're going to literally target down the Thrashers. Upgrades on, so there are upgrades on that as well. And then we're looking at just shoving Sam outside the natural expo. As you can see, like, the Odin is really not particularly bothered about the mutators here. Like, we're just letting him effectively tank them with his face. I am likely not going to go for the taking out the Archangel, the bonus objective here. It's just one of those ones where in practice the fortress was getting pretty low towards the end of the thing, so I'd rather play safe with this one than try to get overly jazzy with it. But as we can see, we're just making our way now out of some of the lava. making our way over to the third set of Void Thrashers. So we can take out that tank. But yeah, sort of clearing the map reasonably sort of steadily here. What I'm going to do is basically with these ramps and such, I'm just going to be poking up them with Tychus, chucking a shredder grenade, clearing them out where I can. We've got annoying banshees here, which is a bit of a pain. So we'll just kite them back. Well, not kite them back, but we'll just retreat a little bit and let them go whilst the shredder grenade recharges. I'm just going to build the last 2 medevac platforms as well now, so we can start evacuating Tychus as and when we need to. But yeah, we're just taking little pot shots at this base now, and working through the upgrades at the same time. Right, we've got another 60 seconds until the Odin actually pops. But I don't think we're going to need it desperately. Get Vega out as the last. Grab him, bring him home. So yeah, we don't really want the fortress to take too much damage on this one. Sirius is going to be in exactly the right place, hopefully, to deal with this enemy attack wave, so we are just going to proceed into the... We'll get him out. Right, that's gone not brilliantly. Lost Tychus, but it's not the end of the world. We will deal with this attack wave and then send Sam in. So we'll set up Sirius and his turrets. We've taken the upgrades for them, so they are now pretty robust. And yeah, the anti-air capacity on them, like, incredibly powerful. I'm going to run Sam up there with his upgrades as well, and we will start chipping away at the Void Thrashers with Sam, and then move Tychus in. In fact, we'll pop the Odin now as well. So that goes there. So this click, and we'll just take out the Hybrid Dominator. So little bit of multitasking, which is not one of my strengths, particularly when I'm having to talk at the same time. But as you can see, I mean, Sam's DPS is absolutely outrageous on this. So we've got him cracking away these Void Thrashers, and unfortunately that's the... polish that off, there we go. We're going to get Sam out of the way, let the Odin tank most of this wave. Sam can go back to a bit of safety in the base. I mean, like we've said before, the Odin is just so tanky that it's simply not too much of a drama, basically, for it to just deal with pretty much everything that it encounters. We are certainly not going to deal with the Archangel at this stage. It's simply not really worth it. I'm going to run Tychus home, and we're basically just going to recharge everything. Make sure that Tychus is on, like, decent amount of health and stuff before we go into the final base. Let the Odin... in fact, you know what? I am gonna do the bonus. Why not? It's if we do that now, then we should have plenty of health. So yeah, if this goes wrong at this stage, I've only got myself to blame. But here we go. So yeah, we're just going to charge Tychus in. If the Archangel moves off to the other side of the map, it's really not the end of the world. But we'll carve a bit of a path there, take out both these Odins, and then see if we can take that out. Yeah, there we go, fine, nice and easy there on the Archangel, so it tends to go down pretty quickly. But yeah, just biding a bit of time while we wait for the Odin to warm up, basically. But we're going to do exactly the same going up this next ramp, just dodging lava bursts, which are cropping up annoyingly regularly there. But yeah, we are basically just going to run up this ramp, chip away at this little collection of units, and then retreat Tychus when his health gets a little bit low. I don't really want him to be pulling too many units in one go down the ramp, so we're just going to try and manage it a little bit so that he's not doing that. But yeah, that is absolutely fine, and then we're just going to use the medivacs to allow his health to recharge a little bit quicker. Right, we are 30 seconds off Odin, so we're going to charge Tychus up that side of the ramp, and then charge Sam up that side, and try to avoid taking too much damage. At the same time, we've got a little bit of void thrashing going on here. Sorry, that's completely unintentional thunder. There you go. So we're going to try and take that one out. Make sure that Sam is also doing his job there. And now we can pop the Odin. So we're going to take out the main hybrid there, chuck a bit of Sam's stuff. This should be the Odin. Leave to its own devices entirely, more or less. We're going to ignore that enemy wave. We've got one Thrasher to go, which Sam should be able to take out. Just safely here. So yeah, we've got an annoying. Oh, there we go. Right, GG's.
All right, well done.
So that's that.
So
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
I have a few questions. Why did you build the fix your safe house at like 1 minute when you won't even use Nux until like 7 minutes?
Yeah, because I find splitting my attention between micro and macro like more difficult than it kind of needs to be under the circumstances. I just like to get my base built up front straight away, so that I can basically focus my attention on microing like commanders later down the line. I find that with Tychus P2, you know, that's if you get to the point where that's all you need to do, it makes it reasonably straightforward. So I just like to get my base set up and running as soon as I can, basically. That's
crazy. I can see the logic actually. Yeah, you wanna never look at your base again. Once you're out of the base, you never want to look at it again. Which makes sense with a mutator like Lava Burst. More so with something like going nuclear. You never want to take your eyes away if you can manage. I can see why. It's just weird.
It's definitely it is weird, and it's definitely not like the optimal build order. But
you even had the double engineering bay, or sitting for like 6 minutes, not doing anything.
That in fairness was simply a mistake. Like I completely forgot my upgrades, hence why I would normally go for the first two like attack and defense upgrades first, but because I completely forgot them because I was just like focusing on micro. I ended up having to do Big Red Button and the Tri-Outlaw upgrade first, just to make sure that I had Big Red Button for the first time the Odin popped. So yeah, that was completely a mistake on my part. I used Tychus as one of my most regular commanders, and I haven't made that mistake. I don't not for a long time. So you can tell that yeah, I was nervous about this one. But yeah, I think there were mistakes made. I'm not going to lie, but it's.
Do you also consider it a mistake that that your attack upgrade was ahead of your armor upgrade by a whole upgrade cycle?
No. So what I tend to do is try and get the and I appreciate that this is not particularly enemy comp specific, but I always try and get the fixers upgrade in there, the Tri-Outlaw one, to give them detection, which appreciating on that comp you don't need at all, but it's one of those ones where like a mechanical habit, I try and get it in there. So I find that having the attack upgrade, I don't know if it's objectively better, but I try and get that as a priority and then get the defense one. So the defense one ends up, like you've said, it's normally about half a cycle behind, because you put the Tri-Outlaw one in there as well.
Interesting. I normally pick the armor upgrade first because with Lone Wolf Prestige, the damage gets cut in half. So I really want to lean into that basically unkillable trope by just getting armor upgrades first. But that's just me. So I think it's an okay choice. And then
no, I mean for me on that map, I was trying to maximize the outlaw upgrades because it's such a quick map that you don't have a huge amount of, like, you're never going to get to level 5 attack and armor upgrades on the outlaws. So I try to save a bit of money left over for the outlaw specific upgrades as opposed to the NG Bay ones.
Okay. And then regarding the use of the Odin in particular, why did you clear out the base first and then just use the Big Red Button on the last few? Except for the last base. On the last base, that was a good nuke. You hit basically the entire thing, or at least over half of the entire thing. Whereas in the first Odin, you basically cleared out most of the defenders, and you only hit like 2 Thrashers, a hybrid, and like a Thor or something. On the third one, you hit a battlecruiser, a couple of Thrashers, and a big hybrid. Whereas when I
Yeah.
normally play, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just going to say that. So that's literally just based on the Odin's cooldown timer, which I had the ascendancy sort of fully unlocked, so it was as quickly as it was going to be. But from my point of view, I like, as you saw in that map, Tychus is so tanky that you can poke in and out with using the shredder grenades in particular, clear out some of the sort of the low hanging fruit, some of the weaker enemy comp,
Yeah,
and then go in.
that
You know,
makes
because
sense.
from my point of view, I don't see much point in having the Odin like waiting on cooldown to hit an attack wave or something. You simply don't need it, and particularly with that enemy comp, like the attack waves are quite squishy. So like if you've hit them with Tychus and the timing worked quite well in terms of the sides they were coming down on that particular one, you know, you can then clear them up really easily with Sirius and Sirius turrets, because they're particularly once you've got the anti-air upgrade on them, I just find it works really well. So I sort of appreciating that the Odin nuke wasn't hitting everything it could have done. From my point
Actually,
of view, what
I actually agree with that logic. If you can just pick off the easy enemies with Tychus already, you should do it. Which makes me wonder, why did you
yeah,
wait all the way until you killed the first Thrasher right around 5 minutes, and you waited all the way until like 9.5 minutes, actually 10 minutes, before you walked in with Tychus, when you could have done that much earlier and cleared out the entire base and used the first nuke on the third set of Thrashers instead of the second.
yeah, that's true. I think I was basically a little bit nervous to commit too early because I only had one medevac platform up. I wanted to make sure that I had enough resources to get the other outlaws out. So I tend to be a bit like a bit more conservative at poking with Tychus when I don't have all of the stuff in place, i.e. you don't have all of the lone wolf bonuses stacked up from getting the other 4 outlaws out. So I tend to play a little bit slower at the start and just make sure that everything is kind of in place. That once you've got all 5 outlaws out, once you've got the upgrades, appreciating on that I messed it up, but then you've got some of the outlaw upgrades in as well, that you can basically poke into some of the bases towards the end at pretty full strength and not be as concerned about losing outlaws when you're poking, because it does that, you're wasting resources. And on that map, because of the way the Thrasher waves build up, so you've got sort of 2, then 3, then 4, I find that if you delay it slightly, the initial 2 Thrashers in the top left base aren't doing a huge amount of damage to Sergeant Hammer's fortress, whereas in the later waves, if you're having to delay because you've lost Tychus by accident or something like that, then that can cause you like significant problems, because those last 4 Thrashers can take out the base pretty quickly.
I actually remembered something because he said that. I remember you lost Tychus earlier in the third set of Thrashers. Why did you buy him back instead of just summoning the Odin? That brings him back for free and faster.
Yeah, that was panic buying. Yeah, what I should have done was just sent Sam in
Don't panic
with the
buy,
super
guys.
cloak. No,
That's
yeah,
your lesson
definitely
for the
don't
day.
panic buy. No,
Okay.
I absolutely sent Sam in and then popped the Odin straight away. But oh,
All right, let's move on. Okay, now we're in the second portion of the interview, the tier list portion. We have a mutator called, is it Breaking Bad?
Breaking Bad.
That's what it's called. So we have Lock and Load with Black Death, Fatal Attraction, and Outbreak. And Joni is here to tell us where the commanders rank. But first, tell us how you'll rank them.
So I think in traditional fashion, sort of looking at how each commander interacts with the mutators and how the mutators sort of interact with themselves, like Lock and Load is a reasonably straightforward map. So you've effectively got the sort of small enemy encampments to clear around the first 3 locks, and then the sort of larger 2 around the rear 2. As is standard, we are going to ignore the bonus and hope that our ally does the same thing, although inevitably won't. The thing with Lock and Load
Perfect.
as a map is that you can get the map cleared pretty quickly. And I don't mean full cleared, but you can get the map completed quite fast. So this is without mutators, I would say like a 12 or 13 minute map, even playing with not a particularly good ally. As I see it, ranking commanders is going to heavily like revolve around how they deal with mutators. I think like Fatal Attraction and Black Death, like together, you are going to get your units are going to get plagued, regardless of what you do. So that's something which is any commander that can deal with that is going to get ranked higher. Similarly, Fatal Attraction, any commander that's got units or abilities that can ignore Fatal Attraction is going to get ranked a little bit higher. Outbreak on a longer map, I'd be looking at a commander that could full clear the entire map, which would render Outbreak completely pointless. On this map, I personally think that you can probably clear it quickly enough.
The whole map?
No, sorry, not full clear. You can complete the mutation quickly enough.
That makes sense.
That you're not going to be running into the aberrations that are spawning at, I think, the 20-minute point.
That's correct.
With Outbreak. Yeah. So I think basically looking at commanders that can do this quickly, and are pretty resistant to Black Death and Fatal Attraction and not worrying as much about Outbreak unless you're going to be a commander which is going to which is going to be quite slow anyhow, at which point you're going to get ranked pretty low. And I think there might be a couple of commanders on here that are kind of end up in D and E tier because they're pretty going to be quite slow.
All right, let's begin. Abathur, where do we have him?
So Abathur on this one, my personal view with Black Death, and I don't play Abathur a huge amount, but my personal view is that with Black Death, you probably want to try to avoid using the sort of final evolutions.
What are they called? No. What are they called?
The Brutalisk and the Leviathan.
Yeah, what are they called collectively?
Sorry, you've lost me.
They're called Ultimate Evolutions.
Sorry, the Ultimate Evolutions, not the Final Evolutions. Sorry, I was thinking of something totally different. The Ultimate Evolutions.
Please continue.
Absolutely. So I'd be inclined to use spawn hosts on this one. You've basically got disposable units there that if they get Black Deathed in terms of the locusts and such, those locust wave are not going to be getting bothered by Black Death. Similarly, like Fatal Attraction is going to be a nuisance to them, but not a massive nuisance. Whereas I think the Ultimate Evolutions are going to get pulled around by Fatal Attraction. I believe I'm right in saying that Abathur's Ultimate Evolutions are affected by Fatal Attraction as well. Having said that, like Outbreak is going to interact with your spawn host comp in a way which is a nuisance. Because it means that you're going to be getting locust waves pushed off by like rogue infested that are sort of roaming around a little bit, which I think's going to cause problems for Abathur this week. Like I see this mutation actually being quite difficult for him. Now it may be the case that if you are a better player than me, you're able to mitigate the damage done by Black Death and do want to pick Ultimate Evolutions, in which case I'd definitely be looking at P2. But I think for my money, I would probably tend to look at P1 with Abathur and be going spawn hosts. This one, I think I'm probably going to put Abathur in. Let's have a think.
Sure.
I'm going to put Abathur. I'm going to put Abathur in B tier, I think.
Which one?
I don't in B tier.
B tier.
I don't see him having too much of a problem clearing stuff. Obviously, using toxic nests and spore crawlers to farm biomass to start with to get some of those spawn hosts up and sort of powered up properly. But the toxic nests will help to a certain extent keeping the infested off your bases and things. But I think using P1 Essence Hoarder with Spawn Host is probably going to be the way to go on this one, given the Black Death Mutator in particular.
All right, let's move on. Alarak, where do we have him?
So Alarak, I think, again, as with this stuff, the advantage that Alarak's got is he can use he can use the wave power that he has to, and sorry, because all of the names of all of this stuff are immediately escaping me, so there you go. But he can use that to keep
the distraction wave.
Yes, sorry, that's the one. Yeah. He can use that to keep like the enemy further away, so to sort of kite them to a certain extent with that. As always with Alarak, from my point of view, like P3 is the way to go. The mothership's got like very, very significant not only health but also thermal lance doing like really serious splash damage as well, which is going to be really useful against the infested, going to be really useful against fatal attraction as well, actually. I think just keeping those lower health enemies sort of under control. Again, I believe I'm right in saying that the mothership is affected by fatal attraction.
It is.
This is going to be one of those ones where trying to keep Alarak from killing loads of his own units when he's tanking masses of damage in the face through Black Death and Fatal Attraction, getting him pulled into the middle of enemy comps is going to be quite important, I think. So I think trying to keep Alarak and the mothership slightly separate from each other. The advantage you do have is that obviously with the mothership and with the destroyers, you've got a decent amount of splash damage. Obviously, as per, Alarak is a bit of a glass cannon. So effectively moving through this map pretty quickly, you could use Ascendants if you were skilled with it. Obviously they have really significant range, using excuse me, using their range attack to just clear out enemy comps, etc., pushing through the right and left sides of the map. I think would go a long way towards mitigating fatal attraction. So I think Alarak does have a decent set of options. Personally, I would go P3 as always with Alarak.
Letter.
And I think I'm gonna go B tier here again with Alarak. Mainly because I still think he's going to have some issues, particularly with fatal attraction. And I think that there are better commanders than him.
All right, let's move on. Arcturus, where do we have him?
So Arcturus, I think, is one of the significantly more resistant commanders to this map, and to the mutators, like basically ESOs and bunkers, going a really long way towards meaning that he doesn't have stuff exposed. If you wanted to go P3, you could, using inhumane troopers. If they're getting pulled in, they're going to blow up and they're going to take out enemy units with them. So the reality to it is, if you want to play in that style, then that's I see that as being a pretty good way of doing it. Basically, playing P3 pretty normally. You can set up your ESOs probably just south of the center lock, making sure they're protected by some bunkers. And realistically, I don't think you're going to have too many problems in terms of using the SOs to take out both the enemy waves and then enemies that are on the map. Obviously, Contaminated Strike as well, particularly if you wanted to go Toxic Tyrant P1. You can basically do a huge amount of damage without actually really having to go out on the map much at all, dropping bunkers to claim the locks. I'm putting... I'm going to put Arcturus in S tier.
Okay. Artanis, where do we have him?
So it's sort of, every week this happens, doesn't it? You feel a bit guilty that a few commanders tend to stack up pretty poorly in general terms. And I think Artanis, this is probably one of those ones that he's going to have just massive issues with. Black Death is going to cause you to be pretty resource starved throughout. From my point of view, he doesn't really have many good options against that combination of Black Death and Fatal Attraction, I think that's going to be a really, really problematic synergy of mutators for him. Obviously, I say obviously, P3 I suspect to be by far the best option here, using the space dudes Archons to
Space dudes. Please continue. Sorry.
No, it absolutely is. It is basically the only thing that Artanis has got to get excited about, to be completely honest. I think with this combo, I think Artanis is one of the few commanders that's going to have real trouble clearing this map quickly enough as well. Probably going for like a Master Dragoon comp or something like that. Possibly going for possibly going for Zealots and Tempests. Although again, I think dependent on the enemy comp, you could end up having massive issues doing that. Particularly if you get like a really heavy Ling comp, something like that with Zerg.
Yes.
So I really don't see Artanis having a particularly good time against really against any of the mutators or any of the enemy comps here. I think using the Archon dudes to take out certainly the static bases on the maps and stuff is going to be absolutely necessary. Getting vision of them is going to be problematic, as is going to be you're going to have to drop the Archon dudes like slowly enough that you're not wasting them and you're not getting like massive overkill on the early encampments. But yeah, I think Artanis is going to really struggle here. I'm going to put him. It's sort of, I suppose it's kind of irrelevant, but like he's going to be D or E tier. Like I really can't see him having a good time against this set of mutators in particular.
D or E.
I'm trying to think if I can think of anyone actually worse than him. I'm going to put him in D tier for now, and that might change. We might have to move him down later.
Okay, please continue.
So Dahaka, probably the opposite end of the spectrum to Artanis on this. I think he's going to have a pretty decent time with this map. As with he's one of the only commanders that can basically ignore Fatal Attraction to a certain extent entirely. So his certainly playing P2, his pack leaders completely ignore Fatal Attraction. So it's something that it is simply not relevant because they're a time-bounded unit as well. They also ignore Black Death to a large extent. Like they are so tanky that the reality is the time they're out on the map, they're like Black Death isn't going to have a huge amount of difference to them. So actually, it's really kind of Outbreak that you're having to worry about, because he basically plays completely normally. Other than that, you're not even having to worry about like the really significant effects of Outbreak. Probably something that in reality you're going to want to put up like 4 or 5 primal worms, just static defense to keep low level infested off your bases. But other than that, you can basically play normally. Because of Fatal Attraction, I'd be inclined to play Creeper Hosts on this one, just to help the pack leaders clear out the bases. But in reality, as I say, I would be Dahaka P2 playing pretty much completely normally. So Dahaka's S tier for me.
All right, sounds good. Phoenix, where do we have him?
Phoenix is an interesting one. This is the bane of my existence because Phoenix is the commander I use least out of all of them. For whatever reason, I'm simply not very good at using him. However, I would say for this one, you've got probably 2 options.
Sorry, I just realized.
No.
The reason the reason you're probably struggling with Phoenix is you're trying to build all your infrastructure before building a single unit.
It kind of is. Yeah, like splitting my attention between macro and micro is not a strength. And so genuinely, Phoenix, I really struggle with as a commander.
Oh my Donnie.
Yeah, it is not a good thing.
Please continue.
But so I'm sort of hoping that I'm right when I'm saying all of this, basically, because I'm going to have to rely pretty heavily on theory here. But I would guess you've kind of got 2 options. Obviously, Phoenix P2 using the Network Administrator Prestige You've got sorry, the names of the champions are escaping me, but the Zealot champion doing huge amounts of damage. If he's getting pulled in and Black Death, the reality is build another shell, use your shell farm, and just replace him.
Just make up
Not
some
having
champion
massive.
names. We'll figure it out.
Yes, I know it's not Taldarin. That's
Floyd
all I know.
Mayweather.
The other. Yeah, exactly.
LeBron
Just goes
James.
in and punches stuff.
Manny Pacquiao. Make up a bunch of champion names. We'll figure it out.
Aldalis, that's the one. There you go. It's Aldalis. I got there eventually. Yeah, look, I mean, he's going to do a massive amount of damage to the areas and stuff. So really using a shell farm to mitigate the effects of Black Death is sort of a super valid tactic there, which I think is going to work really well for him. Similarly, because a lot of Phoenix's power comes from melee units. Fatal Attraction is probably less of an issue for him and for a lot of commanders. Alternatively, you could potentially look at using P1, where you've got the Phoenix suits on super short deployment times, but also pretty quick cooldown times, mitigating the effects of Black Death and enabling you to sort of use the suits themselves to really clear areas. So I do think, despite not knowing like a massive amount about Phoenix, I do think you've got a couple of options here, both of which are actually pretty viable options. Having seen people playing Phoenix really impressively, like I think he's got serious clearing potential on this map. So I don't think you're going to have any issues at all completing the map before Outbreak hits sort of the 20-minute mark. So I'm going to put Phoenix in. Does he play completely normally? I'm going to put Phoenix in A because I think if you end up playing against an enemy air comp, you're going to have more problems.
This is true.
Yeah, but I don't think they're insurmountable problems. I think you're basically then looking at more Mojo and more Calorian, and potentially some Mortalis as well. But so I think shifting your own army comp around as Phoenix, can potentially mitigate some of the air comp issues.
All right, Han and Horner, where do we have them?
So Han and Horner are another one where they're going to get absolutely malleted by sort of Black Death and Fatal.
That is the first time I've ever heard that word. Mark it down. Calendar 2025 malleted officially mentioned on the channel. Well done, guys. Give yourself a pat on the back. Malleted.
Exactly. Like, I think this is actually one of those. This is one of those mutator comps where I kind of feel you might actually be better off playing P2. So playing wing commanders as opposed to chaotic power couple, because I think Han's units are basically the combination of Fatal Attraction and Black Death. They are going to be so weak and die so quickly that I think you're going to be out of resources like very, very fast against this combination of mutators. So even if you were going, I mean, there is the potential to play to play like a decent air comp, basically. So hitting battle cruisers, etc. as P2. Having said that, it's still not going to be a particularly quick build up. You're going to have the disadvantage of not having as many mag mines and not having as quick mag mines deployed. So I think either way, they're going to have real trouble pushing on this one. And I think, again, that combination of Fatal Attraction and Black Death, I just think that P1's units are going to die pretty much straight away. I think you're going to having to rely quite heavily on your top bar on this. So really using like Core in the Fleet and the Space Station to assist with clearing out the two bases to the sort of left and right prior to pushing into those locks on the top left and right.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm similar to Artanis. Really, I don't think that Han and Horner have particularly good answers to these mutators. I think if it was only Black Death or only Fatal Attraction on their own, they would be able to recoup their army comp quickly enough and like cost efficiently enough that I don't think it would be as much of a problem. But I think that synergy of Black Death and Fatal Attraction is going to be like a massive problem for them. Um, and then having and even P1 or P2 just not super advantageous. Like I think um, building up some bombing platforms to help clear out the bases is going to be absolutely essential. I don't know. You may know CTG. You probably do. Whether the bombing platforms get affected by Black Death when they kill stuff.
The buildings don't. They are buildings.
Oh, okay. So it's not the unit itself that does. So yeah. So you'll be fine on that one. But yeah, I just again I don't see this going well for either for any sort of any combination of this. Basically, as I say, my inclination would be to play P2 and to use wraiths, use battle cruisers, use ravens. I'm going to put them in E tier.
Letter
I
E.
don't. Yeah, I don't see this being a happy map for Han and Horner.
All right. Carax, where do we have him?
So Carax, I think's got a really significant toolkit that he can use here. I think you'd be wanting to play P3. So really using the space laser, making full use of solar lance, certainly to clear out the initial areas and such. And then obviously you've got the massive advantage that he's got static that he can build to defend the locks. Basically let the enemy waves come into the locks and just hit his static. But yeah, I think P3 would allow for a quicker clear to mitigate outbreak. The reality is few observers flying around the map. Yes, you're going to have to replace them potentially if they're if they're Black Deathed, or if you do what I would tend to do, which is get them fatal attracted and then spotted and killed. But so you'll need a decent stream of observers coming out. But the reality is, from my point of view, I think you can probably clear pretty much everything with using a combination of like Solar Lance and Purifier Beam. And so yeah, so I'd be playing P3, reinforcing the locks once you've captured them with static defense. And I think, to be honest, this is one of those ones where you're pretty. I think it's quite a safe choice as a commander. I think by the time you get your static up, you're pretty safe. Obviously, static's not affecting either of the sort of really dangerous mutators this week. So I'm putting Carax in S tier.
All right. Prestige wise,
I'd be inclined. I mean, I think P1 is workable. Absolutely. I would steer clear of P2 for all of the obvious reasons.
right.
Your carriers are just going to die straight away. But I'd be probably playing P3 as a preference on this one, just to get the real advantages to your top bar.
All right. Kerrigan, where do we have him?
So I think this is one where Kerrigan, with that heavy reliance on her hero unit, is going to really struggle. Like, I think Fatal Attraction is going to be a massive issue for her, because she's only got the one hero, and obviously Black Death as well, combining with that, is going to cause significant problems. I think making full use of Nidus Worms, or the Omega Worms, sorry, and popping her in and out once she's clearing areas is going to be really helpful on this. I think possibly playing Kerrigan P3, and using that crushing grip power to do real sort of area damage to enemy comps is going to be useful on this one. I think whilst I would normally play P2, I think building up those Fury stacks with Fatal Attraction in mind is going to take quite a long time, and potentially she's going to be getting pulled around, not getting attacks off as quickly as you would want, and basically getting killed while you're waiting to build up those stacks of Fury. So I'd potentially be looking at playing P3 instead of P2 on this one. She's also got the inevitable Kerrigan problem of sort of heavy enemy comp dependency as well. Typically having a significantly worse time against enemy air. Fatal Attraction obviously is not going to help that either, although, her Mutalisks do recharge health pretty quickly when they're not in combat, and the Bouncing Glaive does do, pretty decent, like, splash damage, basically. So I think she is going to struggle more against air comps, But again, I think this is one where she probably is going to encounter like similar but possibly worse problems than someone like Alarak. So I think for my money, I'd probably put her in P2. Sorry, probably put her P3 Kerrigan. As always with Kerrigan as well, it's one of those ones where if you lose your if you lose your hero, then you could end up in real trouble really quickly. On this one, the advantage you have with this map is that obviously the enemy attack waves go for the locks first rather than going directly for your base. So you might have a little bit of time to recover, but this is going to be one of those ones where that sort of the time limit that Outbreak places on you might start to play a factor if you lose Kerrigan sort of cheaply. So I think I'm going to put her in C tier.
All right. No. Prestige wise, you want
Oh,
third one?
sorry, I should have mentioned as well that obviously yes. So third prestige
Okay.
with the additional advantage that that gives her the full strength immobilization wave,
Okay.
which is massively helpful for clearing out particularly the sort of the two big enemy encampments.
Okay. Nova, where do we have him?
So Nova. Sorry, just recalibrating myself here. Right, so Nova has the huge advantage that if you're playing P3, you can start clearing, really significant parts of the map without going detected and getting out of the range of fatal attraction and not being affected by Black Death. So I think Nova P3's got some really serious advantages here. And basically using your units, i.e. the standard sort of tank lib combo, to basically play quite similarly to Carax and defend the locks once you've captured them, whilst using Nova to clear. I think P3 here is probably a better option than P1. Although again, I have no doubt there are players out there that are significantly better than me, who would be absolutely fine with P1. But I think because of how strong Nova is under the super cloak on P3, I think that's probably a better option for this map. The other advantage you've got here is that obviously using the lib tank combo to sort of defend locks, take out the enemy attack waves, etc. I believe I'm right in saying that when her units are sieged up, they're not affected by fatal attraction, or is that not true?
Most units when sieged up are not affected. There are exceptions, but not for Nova.
I was going to say, yeah, I thought Nova was one for whom the exceptions don't count. I think, is it Swan's tanks?
No. Han and Honor's
Yeah.
Widow Mines.
Oh, it's the Widow Mines. That's right. Yeah, I remember this from the other week. It is a slightly peculiar exception, but yeah, Han and Horner are they've got bigger problems than Widow Mines. But yeah, so that obviously giving Nova a massive advantage as well. So I think that for my money, this is one where you've basically got effectively kind of mobile static defense. Obviously, they are affected by Black Death, which is going to be an issue. But at the same time, using the the Ravens in synergy with that, I think is probably going to add significant survivability to your units there as well. So I don't see Nova having too many issues with this map, basically, and then keeping the nukes for the two large bases. I think playing P3, you're going to have a pretty straightforward time here. So I'm putting Nova in. Is she S tier? Does she play totally normally?
You tell me.
I'm just trying to work out how. I think this is going to be pretty straightforward for her. She's got so many tools like Griffin Airstrike, defensive drone. Yeah, in fact, I hadn't mentioned Griffin Airstrike as well, which goes a long way to keeping, Black Death and Fatal Attraction away from your sort of troops as well. I think we'll put Nova in S tier. I think she's got all of the tools she needs to deal with this.
All right, and third prestige, Rainer. Where do we have him?
So, I don't think Rainer's going to fare as badly as some of the other traditionally low-ranked commanders this week, because he's got decent static. You've got Hyperion in particular, which although I think I'm right in saying it is affected by fatal attraction, but because it's a battle cruiser, it basically keeps firing anyway.
They
So
patched
actually,
that. It doesn't fire anymore.
so it's like, oh, does it not? They've patched it. Okay, so that does change things a little bit.
Thanks, Warcraft.
Yeah, I was going to say, of all the things you could do to Reyna, like nerfing the Hyperion's not the kindest. But you know, I think that with Reyna, you do have. I would strongly steer clear of P1 bio. I think with that, you're going to encounter all of the same issues that like a Hanan Horner will. I'd potentially look at playing like a P3 here, and potentially going tanks. For obvious reasons in terms of sieging, etc. You've also got the spider mines, which are a pretty useful defensive tool. So particularly for locks, you know, obviously they are fire and forget, not affected by Black Death, Fatal Attraction, etc. So I think potentially as a defensive tool around locks, really, really useful. Pushing with a combination of top bars and you know, once you've gotten enough mech units out on top bar, on P3, those cooldowns are going to be pretty quick. So you're going to be able to clear reasonably swiftly. I think that, like, mechanically, it's not going to be very straightforward. And I think because of, as you've said, CTG, like, because the Hyperion is not as strong as it used to be against Fatal Attraction, obviously that comes with its own issues. But I think that once you've taken the locks, you know, combination of bunks and tankers, you know, Vulture's Widow Mines if you want. He's got loads of really good tools for hanging on to them and taking out the enemy attack waves there without getting affected too heavily by Black Death or Fatal Attraction. So I think I'm going to put Reyna in. I think he lacks pushing power. He certainly lacks the same pushing power as like an Abathur or an Alarak, I think. But in terms of like being able to retain the locks and not worrying about the mutators once he's gotten them, I think he's pretty strong. So I'm going to put Reyna in C tier.
All right. Stet Boy, where do we have him?
So Stetman's just strong, particularly playing like P2. Like P2 is the obvious choice here. You know, if not for many other reasons other than like, you know, you've got that delay of outbreak through the Stetalites themselves, which although they're going to be flashing on and off more so than normal, you know, creates that nuisance. You've got sort of your lings are going to get pulled around quite a lot, but they're a melee unit anyway, so that's absolutely fine. Black Death, I believe I'm right in saying that Green Zone out recovers Black Death, and even if it doesn't on stuff like the lings, then it's not too much of an issue. You know, they are completely replaceable, so that's no problem at all. So I think, with the exception of Gary himself, who is tanky enough that it's not going to make a huge amount of difference him getting pulled around by Fatal Attraction, I think you are going to be playing pretty normally here, basically, and particularly using strategically timed Egorbs as you push into the locks themselves. Is going to help you massively in terms of clearing out that initial wave of units anyhow. So I actually see Stetman playing pretty normally here. I think he's obviously got resilience to, you know, any enemy comp. It's not making a huge amount of difference to how he plays. So I'm putting Stetman P2 S tier.
S tier. Okay. Pretty high. How about Stukov?
Yeah, so Stukov is one of those ones where I think similarly to Evil Ling on your channel, I'm not a massive fan of like Stukov P3
Because you can't build all the bunkers right away.
Well, no, I mean it's one of those ones that I mean basically as soon as you can afford them, absolutely. I find it like a bit boring. You know, it's kind of just point and click basically. Having said that, it is undeniable that Stukov P3 is quite good for certain things, and I think this mutation is a prime example of that. You know, you've got your top bars which are going to be dealing with, and again, I don't think the Apocalypse I can't say it, the Apocalypse, you know what I mean, or the Alexander, are affected by Fatal Attraction. They might be, I can't remember, but I don't think they are. So you've got them for a bit of early defense while you're building up sort of critical mass in your infested through your bunkers, etc. Outbreak, like Stukov outbreaks better than Amon does. So I don't.
That is absolutely true.
I think I just think by the time you've got your critical mass up, there's really very little here that's going to cause Stukov any issues at all. You've got disposable units. A decent amount of them are melee or close range anyhow. So although they're going to get pulled around, they're still going to be largely like doing their jobs. And I think once you've built up to that critical mass, you'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't see there being a big comp dependency here in terms of the enemy comp. I think traditionally Stukov's kind of slow start is mitigated, particularly on this map, by the fact that you can have a bit of a slow start, and like the early bits of outbreak and such, I think can probably be mitigated by like a bit of infest structure and some clever use of like your initial infested waves whilst using a top bar to clear the early locks. So I really don't foresee Stukov having too many problems here, and I think overall he's going to play pretty normally. So I'd go Stukov P3 for S tier.
S tier. Okay, sounds good. Swan, where do we have him?
So I have a soft spot for Swan as a commander. I really enjoy playing Swan P0, but I don't think that's going to work particularly well in this instance. I think that Black Death and Fatal Attraction are something which are going to really, really hurt his wraiths and any sort of wraith combo you're trying to put out. So I think on this one, potentially looking at using Hercs with siege tanks and using a bit of top bar to clear. So potentially on this one, maybe looking at P. Actually, you know what? Maybe looking at P0 for Swan, because I think all of the other prestiges for Swan have disadvantages that you wouldn't necessarily want to inflict on yourself. Like I think clearing with P1 and no top bar, just using floating factories or something, I think is going to be very, very slow on this. And I don't think there's the splash damage and the slow is necessarily going to add much to what it is you're trying to do. So I think I would personally probably rather have particularly concentrated beam on this map is really, really useful. Like you can take out the initial attack waves literally in one hit, and you can clear up the middle of the left and right side sort of encampments before the locks, like at the same time, using the concentrated beam top bar. So I see that as something which you probably don't want to sacrifice for P1 here. I think that his turrets, like very similar to Karak's, his turrets are really useful for reinforcing the locks. So once you've gotten the locks, like quite easy to hang on to. Obviously, again, as we've said, static, not affected by any of the any of the mutators. I'd be very inclined to play P0 on this one. I think the issue you're going to have is that clearing is going to be quite slow. I think using potentially Hercs and siege tanks to push with is going to be your way forwards, using Hercules to get vision, particularly up the actually it's only the first lock that has a ramp. So, but using Hercs to get vision slightly forward of the tanks, and then a combination of like pulse cannon and tanks to clear, and then reinforcing with static. So I think as normal, Swan ends up as a bit of a poor man's Carax, really. I think pushing is going to be a nuisance. So I think I'm going to put Swan in. I think he's going to be born again. I think we're going in B tier.
Born again. There we go. There we go. Tychus, where do we have him?
Yeah, so I think Tychus is going to struggle more than normal on this one. particularly affected by that combination of Fatal Attraction and Black Death. He does struggle with Fatal Attraction, and the fact that he is also affected more than usual by Black Death means that possibly actually P2 is not the way to go on this one. Like the difficulty is that once you're putting down the healing zones with Rattlesnake, if you decide to go for probably P3 would be the alternative, P1 or P3, both absolutely fine. I think having Big Red Button to clear the two main bases makes sense, but at the same time having the Odin down all the time also makes a lot of sense. I believe I'm right in saying Odin is also not affected by Fatal Attraction, so that does make life easier.
It is.
It is affected. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. So, I would be using it primarily for Big Red Button in that case, probably. So maybe P1 instead of P3. But I think having your units being pulled out of the healing zones all the time is super problematic for Tychus on this one. So I think although he is a strong commander, he is tanky, he can clear this map really, really quickly. He is tanky enough that actually getting pulled around by Fatal Attraction is not always the end of the world. You do have good alternatives to using Tychus as the main sort of pushing unit himself. I think potentially like Sirius being a really, really good alternative, and possibly dependent on the comp, using like Cannonball or someone like that could be massively advantageous. So I think he does have options both in terms of P1 and P2. I'm not sure myself which I'd lean to necessarily. Possibly P2 and just clearing with like Sirius or Cannonball or someone like that. But I think, yeah, he's not without issues this week with this mutator. So I think
Letter.
Yeah, let's put Tychus in. It's A or B. Let's put him in B tier.
All right, he's Bicus this week. Vorazun, where do we have him?
Rare to happen. Right. Vorazun's got the obvious sort of enemy comp dependency to a certain, or enemy comp reliance to a certain extent. I think you are going to massively struggle against an air comp. Having Black Hole will help and mitigate that to a certain extent. But with the addition of Fatal Attraction there, not only is she going to be killing enemy units slower than normal because her units are going to be getting pulled around more, but also they're going to be dying due to Black Death. If I think Black Death and Fatal Attraction makes a Void Ray comp pretty much out of the question for her. Putting Void Rays and is it Mirages that she uses? Can't remember.
Corsairs.
Sorry, it's Corsairs. I think basically her air units become not very viable under Black Death and Fatal Attraction. So I think she's going to have real problems with units dying, basically.
Yes,
P3
she will.
being, I think P3 being the standard way to go, you do at least then have, if you've got a ground comp, you're going to have a much better time of it. Her DTs are going to be sort of respawning at home, as and when they die. But she's just going to have a super rough time of it, losing units. As I see it, yeah, I think Letter probably. Is she going to lose units quicker than? I mean, time stop, and Shadow Guard are her two advantages here, but they're so comp dependent that I think I'll put Vorazun in. I'm going to put her in E tier. I can't see her competing well against an air comp.
All right, E tier for Vorazun. Zagara, where do we have him?
Yeah, so Zagara, I mean, this is the perfect set of mutators for like a P1 Zagara, I think. All disposable units, they don't really care if they're getting pulled around too much because they're about to blow up anyway. Leave some Lings at home to defend Outbreak or set up some bile launchers, something like that, just to create a zone of sort of no go for enemy infested units. But I think that actually Zagara P1 is not going to have a bad time here. I think her normal issue on these maps is that P1 sort of tends to run out of steam a little bit. But the reality here is you've got no mutators that are buffing the enemy. So I think she's going to clear pretty much as normal, more or less. So I think she's going to clear pretty quickly as well. So I'm actually inclined to put Zagara in. Is she A tier or is she S tier?
I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, sorry, I appreciate it's me being asked the question. I think she's going to play pretty normally. I think we'll put her in S tier.
All right. Zeratul. Where do we have him?
So, I mean, as usual, Zeratul, like, cannon's good.
There we go. Right to the point. Letter.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, obvious S tier.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, is this your final tier list? Do you want to make changes, or is this like final?
It's pretty. I mean, it is pretty. I'm conscious it's quite top heavy, and this probably reflects more my own inability with certain commanders than necessarily the final quality of them. But I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's sort of. I'm just thinking there are 8 commanders in S tier, and I'm just wondering if there are any that are significantly better than others, basically. But
All
I
right.
think that.
So let me
Yeah,
start
I think
with.
I think
Yeah, go
all
ahead.
of those commanders play pretty normally.
Okay, so let me start with, I think there is a critical misunderstanding of Black Death, or how it works. Black Death does damage percentage of your maximum health. So it would kill a Zergling just as fast as it would kill the Hyperion. So it doesn't matter how big or expensive your units are, they will die just as fast as the tiniest Zergling when they both have Black Death. So that's the general idea. If your unit gets COVID, no matter how expensive it is, it will go down the same rate as the smaller guys. So let's actually begin. Abathur, the Burrowed Stormhost will smash the mutation. They will make this not an issue at all. I think A for Abathur is the lowest I would go, because the Swarmhosts would just hold any lane. You just burrow the Swarmhosts with the first prestige. You did mention the right prestige, the Essence Hoarder. That will make the Stormhosts gain more health by attacking, then they take on damage. So they will just basically out heal the damage of Black Death by using their attacks, which have a lot of healing ability. So A is the lowest I would go for Abathur. And then once you have like a couple maybe once you have 6 Swarmhosts, you can have like 2 in each lane. No infested will be able to get to your base. And like I said, the Swarmhosts can just out heal Black Death. Moving on, Alarak is terrible because the mothership will just die to COVID. As I mentioned earlier, it doesn't matter if it's a Zerg or if it's a mothership. It will die at the same speed when you have COVID on it. So the mothership will just lose itself over and over again. The best possible strategy you can make for Alarak is to make sure that Alarak is always in front by a big margin, so he's the only one absorbing all the COVID.
He's the only one taking it. Yeah, I got you.
Yes. And I guess that can maybe put him in C tier, but not a high C tier at that. Maybe a mid or low C tier for me. Artanis, I think, isn't as bad as D. Maybe a low C tier, because yes, I do still think he needs to have static defense at home, which will take away from his pushing power. But he can absolutely just drop Archon dudes in the close bases and just use a couple of units at the locks, at the far locks, to draw all the units and then drop Soul Bombardment. The Soul Bombardment will deal with most things, and then just warp in units a few at a time to deal with the rest. Not great, but I don't think it's D tier. Maybe C tier. For Phoenix, the Fatal Attraction will make Akon Dollar useless. If you try to use the Solar Cannon spam as Phoenix, you'll be able to use it once, exactly once. Then you'll get pulled in.
Got you.
It'll be it'll be completely unusable after that. I think because you did mention that he will have trouble against air, I think it's gonna make him B, not A. I think B is where I would put Phoenix.
Do you think P2 would have the same problem
Yes,
as
and
P1?
the problem you did mention with the second prestige is that when your shell farm gets hit with a COVID, it's gonna be very annoying to split the healthy ones from the unhealthy ones. So that will
Sort of
take
keep
yes.
away was the but
Just
yeah.
make sure they are very far away from where the action is, or have like a ring of
Yeah.
cannons and a big margin around them. Anyway, moving on. For Kerrigan, what I would do, I think Kerrigan is underrated here. I would put her A tier actually, because immobilization wave with full mastery clears most of the
Yeah.
enemies guarding the locks, so you can clear the north lock and the east lock with a single click. Except
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
the hybrids and the bunkers, but most of it will go down, and that will clear the way for Kerrigan. Just clean up the rest. I mean, yes, you will still need to take down big units, but you can just hide in Omega Worms and just teleport back home to get transfused if you need health. You can also
Yeah.
go Dude Lords to help clean up the stragglers. And yeah, Omega Worms, amazing for Kerrigan. And her Malignant Creep will be able to out heal Black Death on some units. So that is actually another amazing thing. So I would put Kerrigan at least A tier. Not S tier,
Okay.
but maybe A tier is better.
Do you think she's dependent enough to be? Do you think she does? Is she A tier against an air comp?
Yes, because the mobilization will also destroy the the attack wave if you're positioned correctly.
Yeah.
So
Fair one.
anyway, the next one is Nova. I think you did put Nova correctly. I would just also use Ravens. You did mention Ravens, so I would just put that also because they can deploy turrets in front of the siege tanks. Remember how I mentioned the most expensive units will go down just as quickly as will the cheapest units. So
Yep.
they will go down pretty quickly if you don't prevent them from getting coveted. So I would just put buildings in front of them. The turrets would be good. I guess the barracks would be fine to put in front of the units just to make something soak up the damage. But Raven turrets I think would be really great here because they can be replenished for free. But yes, for Nova, yes, you just use third prestige. Sabotage drone.
Did we miss out Arcturus and Carax?
Oh, I think you just nailed them.
Oh, they're fine. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
nothing to mention. You just nailed them.
Great.
Speaking of
but
missed
yeah,
out,
no,
speaking of missed out, I did miss out on talking about Han and Horner. You recommended the second prestige, which is the worst, because as I mentioned,
oh really? Okay.
the battle cruisers will go down just as
units
quickly
quickly.
as will the Reapers. So what I would do is just go third prestige and just spam airstrikes.
Oh
Just spam
really?
airstrikes. Yeah, spam airstrikes.
Oh really? Okay, yeah, fair one. I just
Spam airstrikes.
yeah. Yeah, fair.
I would put mag mines in front of the bases. Maybe put a couple of depots just to have a warning system that enemies invested are near your base, and you need to send some Reapers, some Hellions, some Hellbutts to take care of them. But other than that, I think your offense should be mostly airstrikers.
Yeah, try to do offense from afar. Yeah.
Mostly airstrikers. For Swan, the Hercules will just get pulled in, get COVID, then die. I think the factories is probably the best strategy. You might want a turret push, similar to what Carax would do, just a little bit closer to where the enemies are. So when enemies get pulled in, when they see your factory, they'll walk towards it and they'll get shot at by the static defense, then they'll get pulled into the static defense and they'll get shot down. And then you'll still have your top bars. Yeah, you'll still have your top bars to clear out
idea. Yeah,
big chunks of the map.
Idea. I like that.
Yep. Tychus,
where would you put him? A or B?
I might have Swan in A. Oh, Han and Horner. I might have Han and Horner in D. Maybe lower C, but I think D, not E. Tychus, I think I would use P0 instead because no prestige, because I think I would rather have Rattlesnake healing and then just push together as a team so that Cirrus Turret would go in front and then the outlaws who stand behind. I would also put some turrets near my base so that the infested can't get through. Something I don't normally do as Tychus, but I will have to do here. So that's where I would put. Oh wait, Tychus, I think B is fine. Maybe I could push for A tier. If you have constant healing from Rattlesnake, you should be fine. Stet Boy, yes, I think that's just about right. Stukov also just about right. Maybe Stet Boy I would demote him to A tier because yes, the green zone helps out a lot, helps out immensely, but Fatal Attraction is really annoying. But then you can still counter it with stuff like infestors. Just throw out roaches, ravagers every which way, so that they'll just block everything, and just outbreak Amon like that.
Yeah, I think Stepman's got a lot of
Yes
answers.
So I'm not necessarily opposing Stat Boy in S, but I'm just maybe I would put him in A, just a consideration. Stukov obviously S, no questions asked. Vorazun is by far the worst here. They might as well rename this mutation to not 1, not 2, but 5 big, fat, swollen middle fingers to Vorazun. Between the map itself, lock and load, wherein Vorazun's time stop will activate the enemies and make them capture the locks all at once.
There's the bug, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah, I had forgotten about the bug. Yeah.
Between Fatal Attraction, that will pull in everything Vorazun has. She has nothing that can stand up to Fatal Attraction. And then there's Black Death, where Vorazun's where Vorazun's Death Recall will send the units back to the main base or the close structure, and then they will die anyway because they still have COVID, and then they will affect the entire mineral line of not just you but also your ally if they're cloaked. So Vorazun also destroys.
You can make a nexus in the middle of the map just to mitigate that. I don't.
Yes, but your ally won't know that necessarily.
That's true.
Yes, I still consider that. You can if you know.
Don't get me wrong, she's not great.
So yes, I would rename this mutation not 1, not 2, but 5 big, red, fat, swollen middle fingers to Vorazun. I would put her in F tier, like maybe even double F. That's a thing. I would. It's just. Do
you think she's actively?
Actively,
like,
yes. By existing,
actively sort of.
By
existing, she's worse than.
I would rather solo the map than have a Vorazun ally. That's fair. Except if it's 2-2.
I was saying,
that's next. If it's 2-2, sure, I can take that. But like on the solo queue, please let my ally just suicide himself. No, not in real life. Not in real life. Just StarCraft wise.
As the commander, then yeah, absolutely.
That was definitely a mistake. I should not have said that. What I mean is, my ally should have used his probes to attack his own nexus. That's what I'm hoping for, not the real life thing. No, I never mean. Let me put this on record. I never mean any physical harm to any of my human allies in real life. Never any harm. Okay, not even emotional harm. I wish them all a very happy, long, and fulfilling life. But if you're Vorazun on this mutation, please just destroy your own nexus, please, for the both of us. Just put us both out of our misery. Okay, now that I think I've saved myself from getting cancelled, Zagra I think would also go in A tier, not S, because yes, Balings are good, but they will still get pulled in, not get all their damage done directly. They will still get the splash, but not directly. So a little bit of weakness, but yeah, still pretty good. A still pretty good. And then Zeratul, you pretty much nailed it. Canada's good S tier. All right. So overall, I think you got a lot of good stuff mentioned, but also some critical stuff that you missed out. I think you might need to like familiarize yourself a little bit more with how the commanders interact with the mutations, especially critical ones like Vorazun's interaction with Fatal Attraction and the map itself, lock and load, and also Hot and Horus option to go to 3rd prestige, and also just Kerrigan's option just to use immobilization with this map when the enemy zone gets stronger. Immobilization is really good. All right.
Yeah.
So now, ultimately, it's not my call. It's you guys' call watching this video. Let me know down below if you want Jonny to join us in the next tier list. And I'll see you guys next time.